Yep, I'll go through that right now. So Ron Harry,
Here.
Christine Lovell is excused. Lars Langberg. All right, present. Carrie Bush.
Here.
Gregory Beal.
Hello, I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear anything.
No.
This is David Randolph.
Hey, David. Let's finish roll call.
Muted.
Hey, Becca, can you try to work with David?
Sure.
Okay. So Gregory Beal is not present, and Ted Luthen.
Here.
All right, so we're just missing Christine, and who is excused, and Greg Beal, who is unexcused.
Great. Thank you for that, Alan.
Yeah.
Approval of minutes from our previous meeting. Everybody have a chance to look at the minutes? Any comments on minutes?
No comments.
No comments.
I didn't have any comments. Ron, any comments?
Nope. Thank you.
All right, can we have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
Sure, I'll move to approve their minutes.
Our minutes are motion to approve by Lars. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
All right, second by Ron. All in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
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 All opposed? Minutes are approved. And now we move on to Planning Department update on matters of general interest.
All right.
What we got going on in the city besides face masks?
All right, so I've got a couple updates. So the facade improvement program has been slightly revised yesterday at the city council meeting. Some of the revisions that have been changed was that, so before it was essentially you could apply for the facade improvement program one time, and once you get it, you're done. The council did change it to be for, you can't reapply within a 3-year period. So after 3 years, you could reapply, but once again, it's also a subjective approval.
Sounds good.
Maintenance. So previously, if you were a property owner and you sold the property, you'd have to pay back a portion of the improvements, a prorated amount. The newest change says as long as those improvements remain and are maintained, it doesn't need to be repaid. Additionally, another portion of that was the way it was written was only that one tenant or one property could apply. So if a building had 2 or 3 property owner or tenants, sorry, I keep messing up my words here. The building had 3 tenants and one applied for it and got the facade improvement grant or rebate. No other tenants could apply. So the way it's been rewritten was that it's based on tenants or buildings, depending on the type of building. And the other change was that projects in progress but not completed may also apply for the program. So those are the main changes happened to the facade improvement program. And the other update on that is that we do have, I believe, 2 applications at this time. So at the November 4th meeting, we're going to be reviewing those.
Great.
All right. So another item was that the Public Arts Committee was taking an item to the City Council for support for artists. So essentially a grant or gift to artists for essentially $2,000 to go to 4 artists in the area. The City Council recently approved this, so the Public Art Committee is going to be moving forward with that. So essentially for struggling artists in this time, it's essentially a gift to help them out, and they're taking it from their budget. They're also requesting that the City Council match their gift, which they're going to discuss at their next meeting. Another interesting item with the Public Art Committee is that the NEDCON piece at the entry of town on the west side or east side of town, I guess, that they're going to be, NEDCON's going to be revising his proposal, which he brought a first draft to the Public Art Committee today, which they were supportive of, and he's currently reaching out to Caltrans to see if it's something that Caltrans can be supportive of. And Lars, if you have any additional details there, you're more than welcome to join in on those too.
Well, just that you guys probably don't know even the history, but that's a project. It was the first Public Art Committee's commission, and it's been in process for 4 years, and based on Caltrans's feedback, that the budget went just like as high as the sculpture did, because it was a visual problem for traffic. So he was just about to throw in the towel on it, and then he came up with a really interesting alternative that feels like it should be approvable and a lot cheaper to do and easier to do. So it was great to see that. It'd be very cool.
Yeah, awesome.
And then he's also installing stuff here in the hotel site, which is a separate thing. He's got, approval and agreement with the hotel owners to install a sculpture or sculptures out here that we get to look at for the next year or two.
Can I ask who's paying for all this? Is this city or there's money involved? Where does the money come from?
Well, the one at the bridge, as I was saying, was a public art committee commission. So that's money that the public art committee money comes from development funds. So if a project exceeds a certain construction cost, then the owner is obligated to pay a percentage to our committee or do their own version of some public art piece. So, but in the case of Ned, so we've granted him a chunk of money, and then he's also got a funder that will help him pay for some of the additional money. And they're also helping fund the one here at the hotel site.
Where does the public art money come from? Taxes or what?
No, I just said, so if you have a development project in the city, so if you're like you, Ron, if you wanted to build a commercial building downtown somewhere, and
Okay.
if you don't put public art as part of your own design, then you have to pay, I think it's 1% of your construction cost to the public art committee, and then we get to spend it on public art.
Okay.
Lars, is it I'm trying to recollect, but I think there was a design competition that Ned actually won with that piece from various artists. Was that 4 years ago? Was that part of him getting awarded that? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So that was one. We've done a second one. They're both RFP, processes, and he was the one who was picked for that first one.
I see.
So it was before even it was before my time on the committee, but it's still going on.
Exciting. It's great.
Yeah.
All right.
So the next item is that at last night's meeting, the city council approved funding for 4 parklets in downtown. I believe 3 of them have rough locations determined. One's going to be in front of Screaming Mimi's. One is going to be near Retrograde, and the third one that's determined is going to be near Portico or the Sebastopol Cookie Company, kind of right on Main Street, right behind City Hall. So, and the 4th location is going to be determined. So it's some of those going to be happening in the city soon. This next one, I don't have too much detail on it, but the city did pass the reviewed the capital improvement plan last night. The main item that I was informed on this was that it's going to include repaving throughout the city. That's just a general update. And the other item is that on October 27th at 7 p.m., the Planning Commission is going to be discussing the local hazard mitigation plan. So if anyone's interested in that, they're welcome to attend. And one other item I just want to throw up and make sure everyone's calendar is clear is that on October 21st, the Woodmark Apartments project is going to be returning to the Design Review Board. So we last looked at this back in December of last year. The 84 units at Bodega Highway or Bodega Avenue with the previously 15-foot tall retaining walls. I've done some revisions to it, and if you're interested in that one, the plans are listed on the city's website under special projects if you want to take a look at it early.
You said the meeting date was the 21st, Alan?
Correct. Wednesday, the 21st.
Okay.
What month? What month?
October.
21st of October, that's the Bodega Bay thing?
Yeah, that's the Bodega.
Bodega Highway, rather.
Yeah.
2 weeks from today.
Okay, okay.
Make sure your evenings are clear. Make sure you have, drinks and snacks and everything.
Stay hydrated.
Yes.
That will be interesting if we have as many people who showed up last time virtually. That'll be a challenge.
No, I've received a couple calls from property owners who live in other parts of the state and they're excited that it's on Zoom.
Yeah, good.
They're property owners who own surrounding properties, but they're grateful that it's on Zoom.
Yeah. Mhm.
That does it for my planning department updates.
Great, thank you very much for that. Let's see, do we have any comments from the public on items that are not on our agenda?
So I've not received any, but I will quickly ask a couple of the members here. Renee, I'm not familiar with you, so I'm going to ask if you are a member of the public with anything not on today's agenda. Okay, it's not sounding so, and I believe Marty, Charlene, and Randolph are all applicants or property owners.
Okay, then why don't we roll into our regular agenda items. So our first thing is design review 704 Robinson Road, a small addition.
Ted, before we go there, I think we just ran over the statements of conflicts of interest.
Oh, statements of conflicts of interest. Anybody have any conflicts they need to declare on any of these items today? Everybody good to go?
Good to go.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry about that. Let's proceed.
All right. So this first item is a request at 704 Robinson Road to allow a 51 square foot single story addition at the rear of the property or the residence. This project is required to go before the design review board as it is part of a planned community, which is a special zoning district for essentially master planned communities. And the code does require that these be reviewed by any modifications to these that don't affect density are required to be reviewed by the design review board. So in short, as I said before, this is a 51 square foot addition. It's at the rear of the property. It's consistent with the height. It's consistent with the planned communities development standards and policy statement, which dictate regulations on height and setbacks. And the project proposes to match the existing materials and colors of the existing building. It's not proposing any additional bedrooms, so it's consistent with the parking requirements. Overall, staff believes that this addition is consistent with the intent of the PD and recommends approval. I also recommend a condition of approval reiterating the notes on the plan sheets that's to say that the paint and materials will match the existing structure. I'm sorry if I went a little fast there.
No,
I think it was good.
I think that was fairly clear. This seems like a fairly straightforward thing. Any questions of staff from our board members?
Questions?
Seeing none, would our applicant like to say anything, make a presentation, tell us anything about this?
Are you asking me?
Yes, if you have anything to add to the staff report or any other information to provide?
Not really. I'm just really anxious to get going on it before it starts to rain.
Yeah. Any questions of our applicant? All right, I don't see any. I think we'll bring it back to the board for deliberation. Any comments on this? This seems like a fairly straightforward thing. I like Alan's comment about matching building materials. I think makes sense.
I would actually disagree with that, given the location of the addition. It's completely at the back of the whole 2 Acre Wood site. So if Marty wants to paint it purple, that's okay with me.
I like that idea. I'm going to be painting anyway.
No, I agree. I see no objection to this whatsoever.
Okay. Yeah, I feel the same way. If you want to remove that, I'm okay with removing that as well. Carrie's giving it the thumbs up. So someone want to throw a motion on the table to approve as submitted?
So
Oh,
just
yeah.
quick,
Sure.
does that mean that I don't have to do the matching stucco
That's kind of what
on the outside?
yeah, that's what everybody is nodding about and giving the thumbs up to. I think is that we're considering just approving it just as you submitted.
Okay, I think it does say that it'll have matching stucco, but if I don't have to do that, that would be nice.
So,
I think, Marty, as long as your HOA is, you're not gonna run into trouble with Michael and everybody there, that would be the only concern.
Yeah, I think your only concern there is your neighbors, and as long as your neighbors don't object, I mean, that's the only problem there. So do what you want as long as
Okay.
the neighbors are happy.
Yeah, it's not,
You
nobody's,
don't need a neighbor problem.
no, we don't, but nobody's gonna be able to even see it, so,
Well,
okay, that sounds good.
All right.
I'll go ahead and move to approve the application as submitted.
We have a motion. How about a second?
I'll make a second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
sorry, can I interject real quick?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
So is this striking condition of approval number 3, which is the one requiring the paint and finish to match existing building?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So we have a motion by Lars, a second by Carrie. I don't think there's any further discussion, so let's call the question. All in favor of approval?
yay.
Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, thank you for the vote, Marty. Motion passes and approved. All right.
You, and tomorrow I get my permit.
Tomorrow you get your permit and the next day you can start building.
Fabulous.
Congrats.
All right.
Okay, thanks. So you don't need me anymore now?
I think you're free to drop off.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Moving right along here, we have our second item, which is our sign program review. And I think we're offering input to the city council on this one. Is this correct, Alan? Tell us about this.
That is correct. So this is a request for a sign program and sign exception at 231 Petaluma Avenue. This building is part of the larger CVS development. And also tied to the settlement agreement with CVS. So that's why the city council is required to act on this one in particular. However, the city council did recommend that the DRB review this and provide a recommendation to the council. So that's what we're here today for. So the purpose of a sign program is to create consistency and continuity of materials and design location while allowing some flexibility for a multi-tenant building within what is allowed within the sign ordinance. The other element of a sign program is that it allows for future signage approvals that are consistent with the program to be acted on by staff. So that's kind of the purpose of a sign program. And in this particular case, I don't know if I need to run over every little detail, but the program is proposing that the signs be of a consistent design, so 2-inch deep reverse pan channel construction, and with 2700 Kelvin halo illumination. This program would also, maintain the maximum sign area allowed in the code, which is 175 square feet. However, this program would create a maximum individual sign area. So essentially say that no individual sign can exceed 35 square feet in area. So that would be an added restriction to this program, or beyond what the code has. This program would establish minimum and maximum sign areas for the tenants. So no tenant could have less than 35 square feet of signage and cannot exceed 85 maximum square feet of signage. So it kind of creates a sliding scale of the amount of signage within the building, depending on what each tenant has. This sign program would also establish a maximum height for the text and the logos within the signage itself. So the lettering of a sign can't exceed 28 inches in height, whereas the logos can't exceed 30 inches in height. The program would also create a restriction basically stating that the signs cannot exceed 75% of the horizontal storefront. So if you have a 10-foot wide storefront, the sign can't go, the horizontal width of the sign can't be more than 7.5 feet long. The program also requires that the signs be centered above storefront doors or window bays, and that signs be centered vertically on the facade. It's proposing that exceptions are allowed per approval of the landlord. And the part of the sign program that's requiring a sign exception is that the sign program is proposing to allow tenants that have more than one, in short, the sign program is allowing each tenant to have one sign per lease frontage. which for the end cap tenants, this would allow them to have up to 3 signs. And per the language in the proposed sign program, it'd be based on if they have a frontage or an entrance. So currently, this would only allow Pete's Coffee to have a sign, but in theory, if the vacant tenant space on the west side of the building were to add a door or entrance, they could have an additional sign there, which I'll go into more deep discussion on later on. The program is also calling out specific regulations and standards for window signs. A lot of these regulations are fairly consistent with what is in our sign program. Essentially saying that window signs are really going to be used for indicating hours of operation, suites, street address, open, closed, and other relevant information, as well as establishing a maximum letter height for signs with the exception of, with the exception for open and closed signs and suite address identification signs, which shall not exceed 6 inches. It also states that the aggregate square footage of all window signs shall not exceed 25% of the surface of any window. And it also dictates the colors, the allowed colors for the vinyl graphics in the window signs. That was a lot. So this program is fairly consistent with our sign program, kind of as I was discussing above or before, except that it does establish, a maximum individual sign area of 35 square feet. It creates kind of a consistent design throughout the program, but requiring a specific type of sign and establishing maximum sign sizes, such as the no more than 28 inches tall for text, and limiting signs to no more than 75% of the lease frontage, and also kind of dictating where the signs can be placed on the building itself. One of the other deviations in this program, deviating from the sign ordinance itself, is that it would allow tenants with entrances on each frontage to have up to 3 signs. So those are kind of the main deviations there. In general, staff is supportive of the sign program, but there are a couple of areas that staff would like the board's input on. Specifically, one of the text changes that I am seeking the board's input on is regarding the vertical placement of signs. As I mentioned earlier, the sign program says that the property owner can have the right to modify the location where, if a sign is placed vertically on the building, or it improves the quality of it. I would just like to add in there that the Sebastopol Planning Department can also have a say in that as well. Or if the board sees fit, maybe it'd be something that the design review board needs to look at if it's changing the vertical placement of a sign instead of it being centered. Whether the language regarding the number of allowed signs should be modified to restrict the number of signs based on the current architecture. So as I stated earlier, there's currently 2 end cap tenants, so 2 tenants that have 3 frontages. And as the signage, as the building is currently built, the west end cap tenant can currently only have 2 signs because they only have 2 entrances, whereas Pete's can have 3 signs because there's 3 publicly accessible entrances. Staff's really seeking the board's input on whether the way it's written currently, where it's just based on an entrance. So if a building adds an entrance in the future, they'd be allowed an additional sign, or if it should be, the language should be modified to be more strict in terms of what is there today, and if it's changes in the future, we re-examine it. Whether the sign program should establish a minimum sign height. So currently it establishes a maximum height of 28 inches for the text and 30 for the logos. And I'm just asking if the board thinks it's important to establish a minimum sign height, such as 18 inches or something along those lines. Additionally, staff is seeking the board's input on the proposed illumination, whether 2700 Kelvin is appropriate, or a range or a different Kelvin level should be established based on prior recent approvals. Also, regarding the window signs, staff would recommend establishing an individual maximum window size sign, such as the code exempts signs up to 1 square foot. So kind of continuing that over into the sign program. So signs that are less than 1 square foot are allowed and exempt and not really subject to the regulations, or just allowed. All right, that's getting messy there. And additionally, staff would also like the board's input on whether the window sign section should be slightly modified, because as it's currently written, window signs may be used to indicate hours of operations, suite and street address, open, closed, and relevant information that does not involve, and other relevant information. Staff would just like to add a sentence there stating that, and relevant information that does not involve advertisement of goods and services. So essentially just kind of stating that the window signage is really just meant to be for information, or it's meant to be informational, open, closed, business hours, small stuff like that. And lastly, staff is seeking the board's input on the sign exception, which I kind of discussed earlier, but allowing the 3 signs per end cap tenant with an entrance, whether we should be more strict with that language, really stating that it's either a publicly accessible entrance, or really restricting it based on the current architecture of the building. Part of staff's concern is that the north elevation of the vacant tenant spaces where the dumpsters are currently located, if there's a sign there, it could look somewhat messy or inconsistent with the overall design if a utility door was thrown onto the backside of that building. Sorry if that was confusing at all, but if you have any questions of me, please let me know.
No, I think that was a good summary. And I think the best place is on the page 7. There's the 6 items under analysis and sign program, kind of the 6 items in question.
Yeah.
Any questions for staff?
Yeah, I have, I think several, if I can remember them all. You keep mentioning Pete's and Supercuts, but my understanding they are gone.
Oh,
Are they coming back or what?
I am not aware of that. I just know those were the last 2 approved tenants in that building. I wasn't aware that
But as far as I know, they're gone. So why are we even talking about, why is Pete's being mentioned as a tenant? The signs are gone, the furniture's gone, it's bare building as far as I know. There's nobody there at all.
So in short, I wasn't aware that they've left.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious. Why are we even talking about this?
Yeah, I think they serve as a good example of what a 28-inch letter height kind of looks like on the building, if nothing else. And they were a previous applicant, so.
So we're looking at consistency, is that correct? In not only the 6 items, but the height, the style, the color?
Yeah.
Uh,
Essentially, this is the rules for this particular building, and we're trying to, the intent of a sign program is kind of create a consistent design, whether it's materials, sign size, illumination, just kind of creating some kind of elements that tie it all together for this particular building.
Yeah, it kind of brings me back to the Pleasant Avenue little mall area we did several years back. Ted, you probably remember that.
Oh yeah, with the signs kind of up on the mansards.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
Is that a similar analysis, or are we talking about branding signs that fit within these guidelines?
I think in this case, it's all going to be, whatever the brand of the tenant is. Really, I think the consistency element here is really just lighting. I think they're all going to be different colors. They could all be different sizes. You could have a big bold font on Supercuts and a more playful font on a tenant like Pete's. So I think that the one consistent element here is lighting. They'll all be halo lit. But I think other than that, they're going to be of different character.
Got it. Thanks.
I still can't understand really what this is about. I don't think at this point, because it sounds like because of this lawsuit, this won't be brought up. Any of this will be brought up before us anyway. So I don't understand what's going on here. I did do some little research on what happened with the CVS lawsuit, but it sounds like what we're talking about, we would have no jurisdiction over it anyway. So why are we even here? Are we just giving our authority to the city council to decide, or are we going to let CVS and affiliates do their own thing?
So the purpose of this meeting in particular for the sign program is to essentially give a recommendation to the city council.
So they will have the final say on it?
They will have the final say, and our role here today is to kind of look at this, provide recommendations, ways that it can be improved or made better or more consistent, and provide those recommendations to the city council.
I have heard from outside sources that they thought that it was only for the original tenants and not new tenants coming on?
So the sign program is essentially to the building as a whole. So we ran this over with the city attorney, and basically his interpretation was, since this is still applying to the entire building, it applies to all of them for this one, for the sign program itself.
Okay.
Well, I think that's a good question, Ron, because overall, my understanding is that because of the settlement of the lawsuit, the city council is the design review board for this property.
Is that for from now on, or does
Well,
that?
that's a good question, I think, and related, my question is, yeah, did a sign program get approved by the city council already as part of their DRB role? And B, because it's new tenants, that agreement is sort of moot and it goes back to us. But if not, like, why the hell is the city council only coming to us for a little bit of input on a sign program, and they never came to the design review board for the building design at all, right? So I think some clarification with that would be helpful.
I think they're kind of dumping it on us here, where we have no real authority in it. So,
Well, we don't, you're right, we don't have authority, they're just asking for our advice. And I'm just curious, like, why are they asking for our advice on this only now? And, you know, unless it is really because the tenants are changing and therefore that original agreement doesn't apply anymore or changes, I don't know.
yeah, I heard something of that kind of off the record, something like that. I'm not sure that's true or not. You know, you're dealing with rumors here, but anyway, I just don't like the whole process here at all.
Alan, can you speak to that at all? Do you know any of this?
Yeah. So I believe it does apply to the first tenants, and I think that part of the I'm going off of memory here, but the part of the reason why the sign program is going is because, one, not all the tenant spaces have been occupied yet, and this is going to be applying to essentially setting the new rules and regulations for the building's future until a future sign program amendment is proposed, in which case it would return back to the board for review and amendments.
Is there anybody here from CVS on our Zoom thing today that could explain that?
So
Somebody I don't know that's here, maybe?
So David's just the sign designer, right? David Randolph.
This is
Yeah.
Charlene, and I'm with Armstrong Development, and I don't know all the specifics with the settlement agreement and all of this. My understanding was this sign program was just to be set up for the building going forward, just so that we had a sign program to go off of for any future tenants, you know, to establish, you know, minimums, maximums, and those types of things. So, but I'm not privy to the information with regards to the settlement or any of those kind of.
Do you have any current tenants?
Supercuts is still there. And I think that they are open or opening. They were kind of on furlough due to the pandemic situation. And to my knowledge, that has been resolved and they've come back from furlough. And we're just looking for their franchisee to open that space. So
Pete's is gone, correct?
Pete's is gone. Yep.
Permanently, okay.
Yep. They
Okay.
did not survive that pandemic situation. So they are gone.
Okay.
And Charlene or Alan, do you guys know, was a sign program ever established for this project, or this is the first time?
this is the first time.
So a sign was put up there before, but it was just more a random sign in that sense.
Correct.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
All right, any other questions for staff? All right, I had one. You talk about signs being associated with frontage that has an entry door. I don't see that that's a provision of our existing code. Is that an existing code requirement? And am I missing it somewhere?
It is not.
It's not. Okay, so that was just,
We were just trying to figure out some way of, if, you know, they're requesting this exception to allow additional signage, essentially, how does it work within the architecture of the site planning?
gotcha. What might trigger the reasoning for that exception?
Yep. So
Okay.
that's coming from.
Okay, that's the only other question I had. All right, does our applicant have anything else to add to the conversation here? Can we?
From my standpoint as the sign designer, we would love, for example, not to have a door to have a sign on that third elevation, but that's what's been discussed so far. Other than that, I've just opened any questions. Charlene, did you want to add anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. Any questions of our applicant?
Sorry, David, can you just clarify that? You said 2 signs on that west tenant is fine with you, but the developer's asking for 3, is that it?
No, what I was trying to say was when we first proposed this to staff, they wanted to include the language that it requires an entry door. We really would rather not do that because it still is a frontage. So let's say the frontage facing the street, and we don't put a door there. We'd like to be able to put a sign there because it still faces the street.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? All right, seeing none, why don't we bring it back to the board for?
Wait, I have a
yeah, go
question actually. David, with related to the lighting question and the Kelvin question, in your experience, I mean, 2700 Kelvin LED is kind of, to me, a little bit of the knee jerk, it's as close to incandescent as we can get level, but to me, it's not always the most appropriate. So I'm just curious, in your experience, what typically a sign like this would have, or what's ideal, or
Probably, interestingly, we try to get away from the incandescent look. So 5500 Kelvin is a very common, 5500 as much as 6500 Kelvin. Basically, our clients and our product works best with a nice bright white. And so, and again, I can ask Charlene if she has a preference on this or not, but we'd like to not have a restriction on what kelvins. But again, that was something that staff said that they wanted the more incandescent look. So,
which comes from
a range would be nice though.
Okay, that's really helpful. So this is coming not from you or from Charlene's group, but really from staff.
As far as I know, Charlene, I don't believe you asked for that.
Nope, I did not.
Okay, great, thank you.
And could I chime in a little bit there? This is tying back into the Pete's and the supercut signs, which the council both required to be 2700 Kelvin.
Back when they were reviewing the building and design review.
Correct.
Okay.
That's where that came from.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right. Any other questions? All right, then we'll bring it back to the board for deliberation. So it sounds like maybe a good way to go would be is if we flip to page 7 of the staff report, and we have those 6 bullet items. Maybe we could just kind of go through each one of those one at a time. Again, we are just giving a recommendation to City Council. So if we can hit those 6 items and then cover anything else that maybe isn't on this list that jumped out at anybody.
I don't know how I could, Ted, I don't know how I could do that and still be on screen without, going back to that electronically. If I had the paperwork in front of me, it'd be easier, but how do I do that and still look at your very handsome face?
Well, I'll read each item and then we can just kind of talk about it.
Perfect.
That's better. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Item number 1 is the language regarding the vertical placement of signs. So signs, talking about this way on the building. So the example is signs are generally to be centered vertically on the facade with the exceptions for visual enhancement to be allowed only with the written approval of the landlord and Sebastopol Planning Department. So it's really just adding that Sebastopol Planning Department to that language. That if you're going to deviate from centered vertically, you just need to get approval. And I could see where there's descenders and little doodads and things on a logo that might make you want to shift it one way or the other. So I think requiring that language sounds reasonable to me. Does anybody have any
I would agree. Yeah.
different opinion on that?
I would agree.
All right. So why don't we agree with that as a recommendation to City Council? The next item is regarding the number of signs. So code allows 2 signs, anticipating kind of a corner property. And here we have, more of a freestanding building or 2-sided freestanding building. So how do we feel about 3 signs on the building? And do we want the 3rd sign to need some sort of trigger, entry door or something like that?
And can I touch in on this one, Ted?
Sure, go ahead.
So the part of this is kind of tying back into the findings for an exception, which if it's all right, I can just read those off real quick.
Yes, please.
So, and it's any one of the 3 findings. So the first one is that the exception will allow a unique sign of exceptional design or style that will enhance the area or building, or that will be a visible landmark. 2, the exception will allow a sign that is more consistent with the architecture and development of the site or site context, or is appropriate given the nature of the business. Or C, the granting of the exception will not constitute the granting of a special privilege inconsistent with the sign limitations upon other properties in the same vicinity and zone district. So those are one of those findings has to be met in order to allow the 3rd signs.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think I'm in agreement that I think you were saying that the one that closely matches or is closest to being a finding for is the exception that is consistent with the architecture and development of the site, in that we do have this freestanding building that is somewhat unique to our downtown. A lot of our downtown buildings either have one facade or a corner like Screaming Mimi's there. So I think that finding could be used to apply to this circumstance. How does everybody feel about 3 signs on a building like this with 3 frontages?
I'll chime in there. I think 3 signs is 1 sign too many. I think there's, this property was developed more suburban than any of us would have liked to see. And there's even, as far as I remember, there's, what's the word? There's even the potential that a building could be infilled between these 2 buildings that exist on site sometime in the future. So the site planning changed to try and accommodate, some future more urban look to it. So just keeping that in mind, kind of taking the higher view. To me, the west main facade certainly deserves a sign. And the fact that Abbott is a street that goes next to the building, you could have one there. If you haven't found Pete's Coffee, if it's Pete's Coffee by then, by the time you've driven around the building, I think you're just out of luck, or you just should get out of your car and walk around and find the entrance to the building.
Yeah. I tend to agree with that. I think 2 is fairly typical in sign codes, and we've got 2 city streets and a large parking lot, so I don't see a real compelling reason to grant an exception.
There is, or will there be an entrance on the east facade? Because I know there's mechanical on the north side,
Right.
and the dumpster trash enclosures. So that was my understanding. That's where we would be granting an exception for that particular location, which doesn't seem to make much sense.
I think there's a door on the east and the north, actually.
You're right. That's correct. Because Pete's did have an entry to the north, and I can't recall if they had a sign there or not.
No, they just had a sign on the west and the south.
That was on page. It was on the plans.
Well, the photos show it pretty well on 9 and 10.
Yeah, it was on page 22 of 36. That's tricky. architecturally, it, yeah, wouldn't make much sense to have signage wrapping the building, as you mentioned, Lars.
Yeah. Yeah, that means that from almost any vantage point, you're going to see at least 2 of the same tenant signs.
Right, exactly.
Correct.
I think on this one, I'll go with less is more.
Okay. So on that one, we are recommending sticking with the 2 sign limit. Item number 3, should the sign program establish a minimum sign height? I can't see any real compelling reason to do that. Does anybody have a,
No.
I think I'd go with staff's recommendations on that one.
so we are not compelled to have a minimum. Number 4, whether the proposed illumination is appropriate or if a range of Kelvin should be allowed. I think my feeling is, yeah, I agree 2700 is getting very warm. I think there's the general desire for warm colored lighting in town, which I don't have a problem with. I think the thing would be consistency. So you don't have a, 5,000 K sign next to a 3,000 K sign. So I think the important thing would be to pick a number or a fairly tight range of numbers. If we want warm white, then 2,700 to 3,000. If we want to allow cool light, then let's pick something in the 5,000 range. But it seems like they would want them to be consistent.
You mean they, the applicant, or they, the council, or?
They, the council,
Mhm.
yeah, would want to approve some range that is going to get a consistent color of light.
Right. And what we just did, is it the Rite Aid?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Didn't we give that a range of 32 to 35 or something
Yeah.
like that?
Something like that, yeah. So
I think that's a good, just, it's consistent with our own findings or our own precedents, and I think that's a nice range. As I said then, I think 2,700 for the old tiny street lamps is one thing, but I don't think it's appropriate for signage. I think it's nicer to, it's okay, but I think it's nicer if it gets a little whiter.
All right, why don't we go with that?
Yep.
Next item, whether a maximum of window signage should be established. So right now, the code, I think, allows 1 square feet of window signage, and that is allowed without a permit. Do we allow window graphics to exceed that, but count against the allowable sign area? We do. Okay, so if you go over the 1 square foot, now you're eating away at your otherwise allowed sign limit.
Okay.
And for me, I think that makes sense. I think if they want to keep under the 1 square foot and that's not counted against their sign area, that's fine. But if they want to exceed that with, the super cuts banding on the window, I don't think I have a problem with that. Pete's had a fairly large logo on the window. I don't, walk up pedestrian oriented. I don't think I have a problem with that. It just starts counting against sign area.
Mhm.
That would be my recommendation.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I agree.
that sounds very good.
Yeah, okay.
All right. And then with the window sign section should be modified to further detail relevant information. And I think we just kind of touched on that.
Does-
So Alan, did that give you what you needed?
I think that does. And the only thing I would ask is, does the board have any additional recommendations or anything that they want to see? Or would want to see?
I think in general, the halo lighting is kind of the lighting is the hot button downtown. And I think halo lighting meets that spirit of the code. And I think the areas that they're proposing are, again, in the spirit of the code. So it seems like, it almost seems like they don't really need a sign program, that they could kind of get the similar signage just by going with the regular code. But so be it.
I appreciate the nighttime drawings of seeing what that illuminated sign would be. I think, and we knew what it looked like. I mean, I think it feels right for that building and for downtown.
Actually, I've kind of made a personal decision here. I think I'm going to have a private meeting with Gurney to find out kind of, because she was involved with the lawsuit, and a lot of things we're talking about today involve the lawsuit, which I'm not that familiar with. So I do know her in some respect, and I walk by her house every day walking my dog. So I'm going to talk to her, and would it be correct if I contact you guys with any information, or would that not be kosher?
Can't do it.
Can't do it? Okay.
So I think any communication would have to come through the city. So if you want to send it over to me, and I can run it over through Carrie and.
I mean, is that something you guys would be interested in or not?
The Brown Act won't allow it, so we would be, it'd violate ethics with the state.
What he's saying,
Our
with
position.
Ron, are you asking if we're interested, just if you send it to Alan and he sends it out?
No, well, whatever. Should I not even bother? I mean, it's something you may not, you don't want to see, or, I can get a private meeting with her, no problem. But I'm just concerned about this lawsuit and the board's kind of dumping this on us, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I probably can find out some, she's a lawyer and she's very political, and she probably won't want to tell me anything, actually. If you know her, that's the way she is.
Yeah, well, Ron, I would actually say, even if we're just getting some dribs and drabs of a sign program, any input we can give to that project would be great. We were shut out, so to speak, because of the lawsuit.
Yeah,
So-
I want to find some inside information concerning what's going on with this particular project from the city council.
Okay, fair enough.
All right.
Okay, I'll have it. I won't send it.
Sounds good.
So if I meet you in the bar, we can talk about it.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Let's see. I think that concludes our second item. I don't think we have any discussion items. And
And we don't have to make any motions on that one.
I don't think so. Do we, Alan? No motion required?
I asked that too, yeah.
Oh, Alan, you're muted. There you go.
No motions, but just kind of recommendations. And
Okay.
want to make sure I got this right, that the board in general is not supportive of the, essentially the sign exception to allow a third sign. Or
Correct.
third signs. And that's a unanimous, and this isn't a motion, but that's how all the board members feel on this one.
Correct.
I think so.
Kind of. Actually, Alan, I have a question for you concerning that Bodega Highway project. You said the proposal was on the city website that we can look at?
Correct. The architectural plans are listed on the planning department's page under special projects, and that it should be at the
Would you mind sending that to me and possibly the others?
I can send the link to the city website.
Whatever, yeah, I'd like to see it, because this is probably going to be a contentious meeting of, if it was the last time. I would like to get a little more information what's proposed before I just sit down in front of the TV or the computer.
Yeah, and also just a heads up, we will be sending physical plans to everybody for the next project, just because due to the size and scale of it.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Bodega Bay one, right? Or Bodega Highway.
Yep, the Woodmark apartment project on Bodega Avenue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
Pat, if you want to dismiss these other folks and our item is over, they can.
Yeah. Yeah, why don't we do that? So thank you to our applicant for coming in, and our owner, we appreciate it. And yeah, good luck at
Thank
the city
you.
council.
And David and David and Charlene, I'll be in contact with you as soon as I can regarding the potential city council date.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Perfect. Thanks
Good
again.
night.
Thank you.
All right, Alan, you have everything you need?
Yeah, I believe I have everything I need, and I will send a link to the city website with the special projects page, just so that you guys can start looking at the architectural plans if you'd like to.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it's there, it's public, so it's available.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks, Alan.
And
Thank you, everybody.
is the other project, the Beal Group's project, is that coming back to us? Do you know?
Which project?
The one at the corner, the brick building across from the city parking lot, owned by the Gregory Beal and the Beal Group?
So we are currently doing the completeness review of that one right now, because some of the changes that have been made to it are rather significant. So we just need to reevaluate and make sure it's a complete application.
Actually, there's a photograph of the new proposal, I think on Sonoma West, if you want to look at it.
There you go.
Oh, leaked. It was
I've
leaked.
I've already seen it.
The leak.
Some intrepid reporter got a hold of it.
I'm leaving that one up to you guys. I can't participate for my proximity reasons, so and you know that. Yeah, looks interesting though. I'm walking by it. Looks like K&L has taken over sort of that little paseo or
Mhm.
courtyardy feel to it. I like it. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
that's
it's cool
good,
that
yeah.
they're letting them do that. It's nice.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Oh, I forgot to say one thing. Did you guys yesterday I went to Hop Monk and there's already a sign in play instead of Pete's on that building. Did you see it spray painted on there?
COVID lies.
COVID lies.
Yeah.
What
Been
are
up
they?
there a
spell-
while.
What are
I'm
they?
wondering,
What
I'm
are they
wondering if they
spelling?
got a permit for that one, or is that part of the sign program, or?
I'm not familiar with it. But
Uh,
And
I don't think I want to know what they're selling.
no, I don't think I'm buying. Hold on a second.
There you go. You're covered.
I go. I'll stick with that one.
I've got to get myself one of those.
Just send Rebecca an email and she can send those out to you guys. Part of Sebastian Mask.
Sebastian Mask sounds great.
They're great. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
be over to pick mine up.
Do
All
that.
right. See y'all in a couple weeks.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you later.
All right, thanks a
Bye-bye.
lot.
Yeah.
Bye. Leave me.